Hello my friends, it's so good to see you today. For this YouTube video, I decided to not film an intro, mainly because I don't feel like putting makeup on. So you guys are getting we're just jumping straight into the content today. So I'm going to be painting a loose marigold painting in my watercolor sketchbook. So the paper I use in here is 100% cotton Arches paper. My friend Janine and her husband Manolo made this sketchbook, and I absolutely cherish it. I love it so much. I am a huge believer in painting in a watercolor sketchbook or any kind of sketchbook. I think it's a really great place to experiment. It's a great place to create paintings that you don't plan to sell, which I think there's a utility, there's benefit in that. I like to think about these paintings, someday being given to my kids. And I think it just kind of gives it a really special quality whenever I do paint in my sketchbooks, because I know that these are going to stay with me. These are going to stay eventually in my family. And I think that's a really special way to paint. So get some sketchbooks, cheap ones and nice ones. I think having both is really important. And so let's talk a little bit about what I'm doing here. So for this marigold painting, I am starting very simple. I have just the lightest, simplest sketch. When I paint in a more loose style, I typically don't create a super detailed sketch. I think it's helpful to keep it really simple, and then also just let the watercolor painting itself, let the watercolor paints and the water inform what the end result is going to look like. So in watercolor, there's so much room for spontaneity, for accidents. You never know exactly how colors are going to interact with each other on the paper. You never know exactly even what the water is going to do or how much it's going to move the paint around. And I think that leaving a little bit of room for that spontaneity is great. I think it's a great challenge. I have talked to many watercolor artists who agree that often painting in a painting in a looser way is actually a little more challenging. You don't have this amazing guide underneath you. You don't have this exact end result in mind. So you're kind of just open-handed in the process. And, I have a giant stack of paintings in my closet that are, I would say, I never know how to call them, or how to refer to them, but I would say they weren't, in my mind, a success for whatever reason. And most of those paintings are loose paintings. And just like I said, not having that detailed sketch or very clear end destination, sometimes the paintings don't end up how you think they will. So when we're painting in this looser style, a good rule of thumb is going general to specific. We start with very simple kind of blocks of color, not any petals. Obviously the leaves, you can see some of the details, but it's all sort of one value. It's not there's not a lot of variation. It's pretty simple. And so then we go in and we start adding a little bit of form by adding those medium color values. So here we're adding just sort of the middle tone orange color to these marigolds. Not adding detail quite yet. So even when you paint a very detailed painting, you are not going to be painting details right away. Details are always going to come at the end of the process. Doesn't matter what medium you're painting with. I think details are always something you should save for the very end. Start simple, start general, get more specific, more detailed as you go. If you are interested in learning more from me, I would love to invite you to join me inside of my membership, Bloom Watercolor Club. The doors may or may not be open at this moment, but head over to SheileneLouise.com/Bloom Watercolor Club to learn more. I would love to have you inside of my watercolor art membership, where I help people grow in confidence, skills, consistency, and authenticity. I have about 100 watercolor tutorials in there. I have an amazing resource library for you to access. And there's also, at this moment, over 150 people who are in there. I love them. They're amazing. It's a great community. I'd love to see you in there. So one thing you might notice about this painting as well is that the background details, they're a little more impressionistic than the focal flowers. So these marigolds that are closer in the foreground here. And that was intentional. I wanted the background details to be a little more soft, a little more impressionistic, and then make sure that these foreground marigolds pop just a little bit more. So I went in with this darker burnt sienna with red mix and just made sure that those focal marigolds popped a little bit more and kept the background ones a little bit out of focus, a little more blurry. So there's a couple of really great ways to add movement and interest to your paintings. And one of those ways is by mixing the really light values and the dark values. So as you can see in this painting, there's a lot of very light moments, light yellows, light greens, and then there's also the very dark reds. And then of course there's the more medium values. You need all three. I think it's really important to have that mix up, especially the light and the dark. You need the light and the dark. I think that's a mistake I see quite often with painters, is that their paintings either land on the well, I guess they could land on either too light, too medium, or too dark. It's often too much in the medium values, I think. So you got to save those lights, and then you got to add the very dark moments. At the end of this painting, I decided it needed a little more contrast. So you can see there's a lot of orange in this. It needed some coolness. So I decided to add in this blue butterfly. I loved painting this little butterfly. I don't paint butterflies very often, but this is reminding me how much I love painting butterflies. So I added him just to give a little bit more interest, a little bit more of like a focal point to this painting. Love how it turned out. As soon as I added in the colors here, I just let the water sort of mix the blue and the tips of the purple. Just let it all kind of mix together, let it fully dry. And then after it dried, I went in with my smaller brush and I added those tiny veinings that you need for the butterfly petal, or butterfly, not petals, for the butterfly wings. And here's my finished result. I hope you loved this painting process video. I'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.